a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a ride.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expounding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality Podcast, guys. I am Brandon Thomas, your host. On this episode, we have Michael Wann on the show. He really needs no damn introduction, man. If you guys know who Michael Wann is, then you know what this show's all about, and you know it's fascinating. If you don't, all of the ways to find him will be linked in the show notes. Go check out his YouTube page, the Susquehannaalchemy page, and he just has an incredible perspective on just everything, the nature of reality, the different levels of reality that we're working with here, and just his ideas are fascinating, guys. He's right on brand with expanding reality. You guys will love this conversation. So without any further ado, Michael Wann. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Wann on the show today. How are you today, brother?
I am doing well. It's evening. It's not exactly the day, so it's the evening time. So if we're going to be like specific, because it's nice to, it's a different feel. And if you kind of like, if you're aware of aligning your energy with like the energy of what we're in, like, that's always a cool thing, because it's kind of like going downhill all the time. You're riding off of a larger source than what you're generating within. So that being said, it's evening. So I record most of these like in the day. And so it's fun for me. And it's going to be like, it's going to be a little bit slower. It's going to be a little bit more, of evening style. So I'm excited. I'm very excited. Today was a good day.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, right. And every day above ground's a great day, man. So I like the delineation. You're absolutely right. So if you're listening to this in the morning, just know that we've got an evening energy vibe going here. Okay.
There we go. There we go.
I do like the delineation though, man. So I've been following your work for a little bit here. I've heard you on some big podcasts that you've been on. I've been a big fan of yours for a while. I've reached out. You were very sweet, came right back at me. I am really, really looking forward to our conversation. Now, when we spoke on the phone, I had John speaker and I'm in here in the studio doing some stuff, and my wife was in the other room, and when we hung up, she just goes, "That guy is amazing." I was like, "Yeah, it's going to be a great show." I can't wait. So I already, man, like I said, you've got a fan here, so I cannot wait for you to share who I know you are with my audience. So if you don't mind, man, just for the people out there who don't know you, just give them a little rundown. I know that's a tall order.
Thanks for the easy one, right?
Yeah, softball.
So, all right, my name is Michael Wann, and I'm associated with something called Susquehannaalchemy, and I started doing this about like 5 years ago, and it started out as kind of like this crazy research project, which was a mixture of conspiracy and mysticism and mystery. And it was gonzo. Like I was completely like, my life was tied into it. And it was just like, that became a really interesting story for me. Half the fun is telling the story. So that began like this whole sort of Susquehannaalchemy thing. But over the 5 years or 4 years or whatever it has been, and particularly over the past year, it has changed. It has morphed, like all things have morphed. And so it began moving more like what started out as like just this mystery, this like crazy story. Then, it led to like, well, why would this be true? What does this say about the nature of reality? And like, if you're like, I've got like, and I say this metaphorically, but I got a PhD in conspiracy. Like I went hardcore 20 hours a week starting like 2007. Like I got like 10 years of just like everything, conspiracy and magic and psychology and all that stuff. So I was like going through all of that. So like that, when the story was discovered, when I discovered the Susquehanna mystery is what I refer to it now. Like I already came with that in like, that was my lens. sense. But then it changed more, probably as, as I grew and changed, as we all do at all times. It became more about like reality, and it became more about consciousness, and it became more about like, okay, well, if this is true, then how do we apply this information in a way that we talked about this before we start recording, like, where we get some return. Where there's like, okay, this is why I'm doing it, and this is what I'm doing, and this is why. So then I started talking that language, and there was like, I could tell when I made that switch. There's some people like, go back to the conspiracy, like stop it with the philosophy, like get off that, get off. There's some of that. Some people just like the philosophy, and they're like, I don't really care about the mystery. But then COVID hit. And like my brand of crazy suddenly seemed to be like, okay, well, you know what? I'm in a new space now, and I need a new story. And so the Susquehanna alchemy, the Susquehanna mystery has taken that trajectory. So what is it? Where is it now? So this is the answer to your question. All of that was, I guess, the preface, the build up to this. It's like Susquehanna alchemy is looks at discussions of examinations of reality, consciousness, for the purpose of escaping the matrix. And that may not be exactly what people think it may mean, but that's what it is right now. That's what interests me, and that's what I'm talking about.
So absolutely, and I'm with you. When this whole COVID thing hit, we all started not to sound that crazy, or people had more time to investigate the things that we've been saying for years, man. And it's like, just look into it. And then they finally, do the research. Finally, they had some time to do the research, and they started looking into a few things. And that's
motivation.
And the motivation as well. And that's very true. Absolutely. Great point. I had several people come up to me that know me, and they said, man, always thought you were crazy. I said, thank you. And because, I've always had the model that being well adjusted to a sick society is no measure of good health, right? And
one of my favorite quotes, one of my absolute favorite quotes. Nothing makes more sense than that.
Absolutely. And once you get to that point, it's a very freeing thing, right? And so I had a lot of people come up to me with that look in their eye. And that look when you first find out. And I haven't seen that look on my own face for well over a decade and a half now. And so whenever people would come up and say, man, you were right. And I said, well, I wasn't right. I just followed breadcrumbs, and here's maybe something I can help you out with. Keep your inner peace. Just know that you have control over how you perceive your reality, but just know also that there's some messed up stuff going on in your reality, right? So what about escaping the matrix? What do you mean by escaping the matrix? So set the foundation at first. What is the damn matrix, man?
All right. So there's matrix and there's the matrix. All right. And let's take a step backwards. So this is a model. All it is a model, and it's meant to meet whatever model you have. It's like models are tools to help us understand the ununderstandable. So, okay, here's a model of reality. So there are 3 levels of reality. So we're going to start with baseline reality. And baseline reality is the natural world. It's the natural world. It is also the reality which is known like as Maya, is known as dream time, is known as the simulation. Like all of that is true too. And the best way to explain it is it's not what we think it is, but we don't know what it is. Like all you can do is that. It's like, okay, we know it's not what we think it is, and we don't know what it is, but we're comfortable with that. So we've got that. That's our baseline reality. It's our physical reality. It's the natural world, but even more specifically, it's the natural world before it's named. Because once you start naming the natural world, you move out of the consciousness to experience that reality. So we've got that. That's reality 1. And a type of consciousness. So then we have, within this baseline reality, we have matrix consciousness or matrix reality. And so matrix reality is any reality which comes from a story, which is like man-made, which is like, okay, this is language, like everything like about being human. That's like which we live our lives. That's matrix reality. It's some matrices are better than others. Some are in more harmony with baseline reality, but they're just stories, and they're just agreed upon contracts, and they're all like incredibly fake, but they're just like stories created. And some of them are better than others. But then you have the matrix, and the matrix is a very specific type of matrix, and it is the dominant one we are experiencing, and assuming history is accurate, it is like, has always been there. And it is a matrix. The matrix is identifiable because it is built, all of its rules and laws are inversions of the harmonious workings of baseline reality. So they're like the flip side, or maybe the 90-degree angle to whatever that particular, frequency or whatever those rules of nature would be. Like it's connected to it. It's just like it's not really part of it. And so everything in the matrix is like domination. It's based upon domination, this master slave sort of thing, relationship dynamic, pay to play, like the very fact that you have to pay to survive. And then, it goes deeper and deeper. And like the system you got to pay with is like totally rigged. And like, in the deepest level, I'm not just talking about like, oh yeah, the Wall Street's rigged. No, I'm like, no, like the consciousness behind debt-based currency is rigged so that like if you got a lot of currency, you got a lot of debt, like all that sort of shit. So all of that, so that's all the matrix, but it's deeper than that. It's like, and hopefully we'll get into this. It's time, it's calendars, it's language, it's all of that sort of stuff. But the matrix is the closest thing to us, and it's self-referencing because you're born into it, and it's constantly reflecting itself back, so it appears to be real because you've never not been inside it. And so that's mostly like the breaking out of the matrix, or the escaping the matrix, is like, it's not so much like I'm going to go off grid, and certainly that's part of it. But if you're still thinking, and if you're still understanding and interpreting reality based upon those same matrix rules that were in, which became our second nature, that's what they are. They just became second nature. You're still in the matrix. And I don't have the skill set to teach anyone how to go and live off the grid. I'll be the first one to say that. I walk between two worlds right now. I think a lot of us are walking between two worlds. And my piece of the puzzle, because we all got different pieces of the puzzle, is about like in a very, very practical way, like how you disengage consciousness from the matrix. And the reason why you want to do that is so that the first level of understanding reality is not a matrix rule. It's when we get into the examples, it may seem a little bit like that's it. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a big deal. And we could go into it. So that's matrix reality. And I want to go to the third reality, and then I'll give you an opportunity to reflect back. So the third reality is that which the baseline reality exists within. And remember, like matrix is part of or exists within the baseline reality. So it's like, it's within it. And that is the greater reality. And the greater reality is all the mysteries. It's all the structures behind the scenes. It's all the stuff that make this work. And we don't really know what they are. We can understand their patterns, I suppose. But as soon as we start coming up with the stories of them, that's when we move into a matrix reality. I'm not saying the stories aren't accurate. Maybe some are more accurate than others. But when you start going in that direction, that's what's you start to blend with matrix reality. And so the greater reality in its purest definition, I'm not saying how anyone should live their life, but the greater reality is just it's two parts. It's the understanding of that it's all a mystery. And then secondly, that you are part of it. And so like to be able to recognize without necessarily like defining too deeply what you're a part of it means, but to be able to like actually blend into that in a real inner way.
And it's interesting because what this speaks to is how powerful we are as creators, as entities, as that we can create something so far removed from the natural processes of the world that we are then now breeding more people into that system as well. And then what's interesting about it, I think, is that just by naming things and by observing things. So what we're basically talking about here is on a quantum level. The second you observe or name or judge or think about or have an opinion about, good or bad, either way, you kind of separate it and you make it now part of this different thing. So how would one go about living life in a perfect state to where we don't then now transcend all these beautiful things, and I'm going to say taint them a little bit by then judging or naming them or pulling them into this other reality, and just observing the natural world around us by just enjoying it and dispassionately?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, it's this. It's like it's for each person to decide how they want to live their lives. Like, I don't want to, I'm not interested in, at least right now. There are times where I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm interested in. But I'm not interested in right now, like, living as a monk on top of on a mountain in a solitary environment. It's like, listen, I was born into this system. I get this system. I was born into this system in the most exciting time. And I have some degree of insight into it. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, at least for right now, like this is part of my life. And I'm not like people that's just me. And so each person, as I don't want someone to tell me what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. So that being said, this is what I think is the value or the significance. It's understanding what's happening so that you can then play with a greater understanding of the rules. So naming consciousness has a great purpose. Like, it allows us to go, at least with words, before I can communicate directly to your mind in like images or what have you. Like, I don't have that. I haven't had that experience yet. So for now, I got words, and words are helpful. But you're absolutely right. The moment it's named, like, to a quantum level, and then to whatever degree that spills out from it, it's like, yes, like it's like you've collapsed all other potentialities of what it could be. And this is what it is. This is now a friggin' tree, and it's part of a forest. And this is its job, and it's a housing the birds, and it does carbon dioxide, and you're doing all of that. And that may be 100% right, but like you just cut down a whole bunch of other potentialities. So it's like, naming does some stuff. So it's the well, there are two parts. It's understanding, okay, well, when I name this is happening. And so you're at least aware, because awareness it's exactly what you're saying. There's this with the when you become the observer, when you become aware. So that's kind of like being an observer of life. You're now aware that there's something happening. Well, now you're changing it. And so the awareness like changes it, and it's going to change it, or the observer changes it based upon what the observer brings to it. And so like, if you're coming with it, like, I understand what's going on and I'm observing that I'm naming and I understand what naming does. Well, then there seems to be this self-correcting sort of thing. You're like, well, I'm going to be a little bit smarter with my naming. That's part of it. But the other part is being able to recognize the false realities. So this is what the Matrix does. The Matrix, this is their primary modus operandi of how they've created this reality. They create a false reality that is very, very similar, which is very, very similar to the regular reality. And this can be done in infinite ways. And sometimes it's exactly the same. There are all these different ways in which it's always has to be like symbolically, there's a linkage somehow that exists, not so much in the rational mind, but within more of the creative mind, but it links it. It links these two things, and they create this false reality. And each person, we're being constantly conditioned to live in this false reality. And that becomes like, oh, okay, because this is the human experience, or the way of being human. This is what we do. We latch onto something and we connect to it. And it's just like, the whole thing about, what is it? The goose is the first thing the goose sees when it comes out of the egg, more than any animal, like it will imprint to. So like if a goose like sees a lawnmower, like it follows around the lawnmower. So it's like it's connecting, like we connect, we're always connecting. So you're going to connect to something, and you're given this false reality, which is seemingly true. Which seemingly, like, there's part of it which feels true, sometimes more true than other true. And at the same time, the actual reality, which, or the baseline reality, that's kind of hidden. That's hidden, and it's hidden with the naming. This is like the hiding in plain sight. So when we begin to recognize that, and then we begin to realize like, oh, this is the false reality. This I thought that was real. I didn't even think that was a reality. I just thought that's the way things were. And then you can begin to understand how the game is played, or at least how to play the game at a different level. And, I use the word game because they just changed the rules on you. They just changed the friggin' rules on you overnight. And so guess what? It's a friggin' game. And so if you treat it that way and you understand the rules, you can now start to participate in on your terms. And so I want to say this one last point, which before I hand it back to you. So you said that what was it about human beings were like these amazing beings, were what we're capable of? Do you remember exactly what you said?
Yeah, it's kind of to the idea that we're these infinite beings that can create our reality, and then therefore what we observe, then has an influence over our observation of it, right? Is influenced rather over our observation.
Yes. Okay. So I used to hear that, like, I can remember like 10 years, like I've looked at a lot of different things. And I'm 100% open-minded. And for the most part, I try not to be judgmental, but there's certain things that I'm like, this resonates with me and that doesn't resonate with me. I'm like, I get it. Like, I think I can walk that line pretty well. So that being said, maybe like, I don't know, like 5-10 years ago, you would hear that type of language, or at least I was hearing that type of story a lot about, like, we are such amazing beings. And if we only knew how amazing we were. And there's part of me which was rolling my eyes. And the reason I was rolling my eyes, I'm like, well, what the fuck does that mean? Do something amazing. Like that just, like, I'm totally down if you could give me something real. But like, when that just talk, like, I don't know, like, that's where I was then. So, but I'm not there anymore. So I'm just like telling you, like, the whole process. So as I became more and more acutely aware of everything that we take in our regular life as just being like, oh, that's just life. That's not a thing. And then you realize, like, the amount of effort, the amount of friggin' effort, which is like going to you to make certain that this is how you expand reality. Because if for a minute we like they let up the governor, the control, well, then what's going to happen? So I started thinking about that. And I'm like, and I went back, 5 years ago, and I was like, those MFers were right. Why else would they be doing this? Because if we knew what we could do. And so it's like, now it's a different story for me. I still have not yet to fly. I'm still not yet to fly. And I'm not encouraging anyone to jump out of the window. But the moment I see it, I'll be like, yeah, I know it.
There's some interesting thoughts on that, though, and I want to go down this road with you now, because Tom Barnett, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's an Australian guy. He's very outspoken against vaccines. He's a very health-conscious guy, and he has, on a natural level, he believes that we all have that ability, but that it's snuffed out in us from the fake reality or from the false reality that's over us. And it's so convincing that we can't do that, or that we're not capable of that. And then you'll hear these stories of children just saying, like, why can't I fly anymore? I used to be able to. And so children are aware of this on a very conscious level, that it is one of the abilities that they have. Now, I think that you're born, or, the saying is that you're born with 2 innate fears as a human being. And most mammals are, actually. You're born with the fear of heights and the fear of loud noises. And those are survival techniques that have been built in us.
I was always told snakes was on there, because I always thought, where did that come from? But anyway, so go on.
No, you're right. And religious, I've been having a snake deal going on out here as well. If you follow my Instagram or TikTok or whatever, you'll see that. I've pulled the same snake out of my chicken coop, I think 4 times now. And I just keep relocating her. So I come home and I take my snake for a walk, right? It's a non-venomous thing, but I'm terrified of them, even though I know that there is nothing wrong with this thing. Now, I think maybe that has to do, and we're just speculating here, about religious upbringing and about being scared of the snake, in the Garden of Eden and all that. That may be one of those things. But also, evolutionarily, I'm not scared of dogs, and we should be scared shitless of wolves, If it would follow the same logic, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you start asking questions, just like what you're doing, like you start to see like all of these stories break down. And I don't think there's that's not necessarily a problem. Like the way that's seen as a problem. So this is so we'll get into just the structure of human psychology. Particularly in this world where we're just given a false reality. And there's a part of you that knows it's a false reality. And each person creates a persona. Like everything in this first false reality is to encourage you to create your own false reality. Like everything from horrible home lives. Like we think about even the best home life here in this modern world, for the most part, is still tainted with a whole bunch of nasty shit. It just might not be as crazy as all the other ones, but that brings out a lot of qualities. It naturally brings out qualities which really doesn't serve the human experience, but nonetheless, I don't even remember where I was going to go with this. What were we just talking about? We were talking about the
So listen, I wanted to point something out.
Oh, the dogs and the animal and the fears.
Well, perhaps, right? And so I've always been heard, and this is just one of those things you hear, right? And you also hear that falsitude that daddy longlegs are the most venomous spiders in the world. Well, they're not. That was from the movie Arachnophobia, and it's not even true. And then
I've never heard that once.
Oh, really? Yeah, I heard it a ton. I even repeated it a bunch until somebody pointed it out to me. They're like, hey, dickhead, you know that that's false information? And I was like, whoa. And so I had to rework my whole paradigm, and I had to really look into it. But what you said about the reinforcing the your persona, and I think you're right about this. I think that we do have a persona that we're raised with, and in utero is when you're most in utero to 6 or 7 years, somewhere around in there. That's when you're the most impressionable. That's when the ideas and the identities that have been forced upon you are imprinted as a basic foundation that then you've got to break out of that later on. That's something that used to define you. Perhaps like you can't fly. Mike, yeah. Maybe you can, man. Like I said, start small. Start off like your first step.
Exactly. And I remember what I was going to say, and I was excited. This was a good point. So, and it complements what you're just saying. So, our system, like the system, and just like what you're saying, like it's like in the DNA, and it's like in the environment, and it's all that sort of stuff. And so it's to encourage you to create this false reality. That's part of like how our psychology is, like, you know, you do these things so that you can fit in. Like as a 3-year-old, you learn how to like get whatever it is you need to get you, and then it continues to go from there. So each person has, particularly for someone who like, this is like a foreign concept. Like as soon as you hear this and you're like, oh, is that a possibility? Did I do that? Well, then suddenly you're an observer in the experiment, and then all these other potentialities collapse. But so you're a regular person, and you've got a false reality, but you got no idea you got a false reality because you think that you've got a real reality, and you've got a real person, you've got a real personality. And then what happens is, anything which is part of a false reality, as that begins to deconstruct, particularly of the individual, like within their personality, but could just be like a belief which they hold. There is an innate fear of, how about this? There's an innate fear of falling. And it's falling because you're in a house of cards, because there's a part of you that knows that everything is fake. And this is where the trickery happens. If we were raised in a culture which truly connected you to something deeper, like that was part of the upbringing, not like, and so nothing, when that happens, when you are grounded into something which is, and it can't be a story, it's got to be more than that, but a story can be tied to it. But when it's something which is unshakable, well, then like you don't have that fear of falling. The fear of falling happens when you don't realize there's something else to hold on to, that there's something else which you need to connect to. This was the whole thing about the imprinting. And it's like, we got to connect to something. So it's like everything. I'm connected to my false reality. I'm connected to my false persona. I'm connected to all of this sort of stuff. And it's like, I don't even know there's anything else. This is all I know. So it's terrifying to that person. It's terrifying to that person in that state. You know, maybe you've been there as well. Like we've all been there at some point for something. And when it crashes down, like, you know, there's that, and there is a fear of that. And so this kind of goes back, this is where we were going with this. You asked the question, you were like, well, you know, what do you think is the right thing to do? And it's like, well, the right thing to do is to help people with awareness, like on so many different levels. Like as soon as you get like a little bit of awareness, like, oh wow, I didn't realize like that how the medical industry is structured, and I didn't realize that. And then they're like a little bit more aware of something else, and then it unfolds, and it like dominoes falling down. And then if the more tools you give someone, they can go and deconstruct their own stories. And that to me is what I would think would be ideal and we do this together, because I think, I mean, I did a video the other day, and maybe we'll talk about this, about friggin' dragons. And I laughed at myself because like, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, because this is so ridiculous. Like, I mean, it's so ridiculous, but all signs point to the fact that if there's such thing as dragons, I know where they're living. I literally know where they're living. And I'm like, I never thought that. So the point I'm trying to make with this is like, you know, we're all deconstructing the story. So maybe I'm still like uncertain. Once I see a dragon, but I've become a whole lot more like, well, open to the possibility of there being living dragons on Earth than I ever was like in my whole life. So that's Mike's story, deconstructing. Now, whether or not it turns out we see a dragon, like who knows? But as that happens, I'm going to be pretty like, holy shite, what else is different? So that's what I mean. Like we're all in this together and we're all in like different stages. And so it's all crumbling down. It's all crumbling down. And this is another reason why people are going so easily to the story that is being sold to them, because they don't really have anywhere else to go. And I mean that with consciousness. They don't have any other understanding of reality. They don't have any understanding of reality. And, you know, I'm from that world. I grew up in that world. So I've got like a lot of sympathy to those folks who are interested in expanding or expanding their deconstructive process.
You know, and that's what this show is all about, man. We talk about ideas here. No ideas are ridiculous. None of them are off the table here. We'll talk about anything and discuss them at length. I've actually got a pretty mind-blowing conspiracy theory that I made up. Well, let me say this. I haven't heard it repeated anywhere else, but I want to get to that in a little bit. But to one thing that you said about deconstructing your own matrix. Now, what I've found is that whenever I go through the awakening process, or whenever people go through that, you start to hit on a few things and then you start to wake other people up. But then you may find out that one or two of those things is not true or is not accurate or with further research. But what I think it does do, and the value in being able to have these kind of conversations, is that it allows you to start questioning things. That's the big one. And it allows you to start going, well, if that's wrong, you know, because that's how I got started with this, is with spirituality, then to conspiracy theories. I was the other way around. Some people do it the other way around. It doesn't matter. But one of the interesting
I actually started spirituality before conspiracy. So
okay, so we align on that. There you go. Okay, it's an interesting thing though, and it's really, I think that because you're raised, if you are raised religious, then you kind of get to a point to where you're like, hang on, this doesn't really make sense, and I remember one of the falsehoods that one of my youth pastors said, because I was raised Baptist in Texas here, God bless him, is that the Bible is the one book that has never contradicted itself. And what's interesting is I found a lot of contradictions when I went looking. And I was like, well, if that's true, then what the hell else is going on? And then that led me to several other things. And then I got into Neil Donald Walsh's Conversations with God. That book just threw me off, man. I mean, that was a big one. That started making me question a lot of things. And just about possibilities. Now, you said about possibilities, and that's where I exist, and I know you do too. It's that there are so many things out here that we don't understand, the understanding of which would change everything. But I think just the understanding that is an understanding changes everything. That's your baseline. That's when you start to splinter off into all these other concepts and ideas, and that's when you're able even then to entertain a conversation about ideas. And you're not defensive about a belief system that you were fed that you didn't actually do any research into. And then a lot of people don't. And then whenever they start doing research into it, it starts to contradict their beliefs. Well, they lean back on it. Because like you said, man, and I think that you nailed it. You put it, they're being marched to slaughter because they have nowhere else to go. And there are a few folks out here that are breaking open. And there's a real divergence in understandings here and in consciousness in general. And it's almost like there's two worlds existing here together at the same time, which has that been your observation as well?
Yeah, well, yes. But what I love to have the fun of this, I'm using the word fun, is like, it's fascinating. Like there's the personal story and there's that, and that's level reality. But then there's like, when you could like kind of separate and be like, this is actually happening. Like, look what's actually unfolding before your eyes. So what I have been so interested in watching are people who I know. People who are like, within my actual living experience, and seeing how they respond. And what I love is when the assumption I made was wrong. I'm like, oh, this person's definitely going to be that way. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they believe that. Yes. And it's like, and then I'm like, I can't believe they saw through that. I never would have guessed it. And so that has been so much friggin' fun. And so this is my take on that. Like, at the end of the day, this is it's fun to talk about the ideas. And as I said, like, I'm real practical. I'm real boring that way. But like, the only thing that really matters for most of us is cleaning up our emotional, psychological world. Like, all the other stuff doesn't matter because we could learn like fifth dimensional physics and all that sort of shit. But if you're still all fucked up, It don't matter.
Right.
And in fact, like I'll even go this far. I'll be like, well, that's the reason why you don't have the fifth dimensional physics is because like there's a built-in safety valve that you can't learn it when you're fucked up.
Yep.
And that is not a judgment. It's like it's the quote you said. Like it's how about this? There's no manner of shame to be fucked up because you grew up in a fucked up world.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I point out all the time, guys. It's not your fault, and there's the research is out there, and go for it and spend a little bit of time on this. Now, I will say something to what you said. You are boring is not a word that I would use to describe you in any stretch of the imagination. Guys, I will be, of course, linking in the bottom of the show notes all the ways to find Michael and his great videos. You're fascinating. I was telling my wife right before we started this, we're outside, I was getting in the mode, and I was telling her all about you, and she said, oh, it's that guy, the guy from the phone. And I was like, yes. And I said, I could have this guy on 1,000 times and never even scratch the surface on what he talks about. And that's a great thing, though, man. I mean, you're just such a fascinating guy. So now that we're done massaging you here, I will say...
all right, hit me with the hard one.
Yeah,
hit me
right.
with the... Well, I talked to your next door neighbor, and this is what they said.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let me throw you a wild curveball here because it's just something that I thought about one time. May or may not have been on mushrooms, but my thought on this is what if, and this is massive what if, okay? What if nothing existed before you got here, okay? And that this story is all about, not in a, it's all about me kind of thing, but this is a tailored experience for you to figure out these mysteries with these paradigms. It's basically like a simulation, if you want to put it. But no history actually exists. Everything started when you got here with the idea that all of this happened before you because you had to be told that, right? You had to be told that our Earth is round. It's counter to our observations. You had to be told that dinosaurs existed and that they dug up some bones and that's how they know. So you had to be told that somebody died for your sin and that there's this system. Oh, but there's this other system where they don't believe that shit at all. It's all basically like you were plopped into this idea. Have you ever heard of this before? Thought of this?
Well, no, like I totally like, no, I love it. I've thought very similar thoughts. I've thought very similar, and it makes the most, in my personal life experience, that makes almost more sense than anything else. In fact, it may make the most amount of sense. Most amount of sense. And that was a lot of, I brought this up with the Susquehanna mystery. I'm like, this is so friggin' personal. I'm like, this was like written for me. But then, and so I'll say two things. One is, part of the false reality is that you can't say like it's all about me because we know so much about like narcissists and narcissistic personality disorder and like, oh, well, it can't be about you because, and so like just saying that, it's like, you're like, well, let me couch this in the right terms, that's part of like the thing. So it is all about us from the experiential level, but then there's also like every other person, it's all about them too. And there are people you connect with, and then that third thing happens. Like, it's all of those sort of things, but primarily, yeah, it's about you. And I used to think about this a lot. When like on the beach, like you've been to the beach before?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And you probably were there when it was sunny and nice out, right? And you're standing on the sand and you're looking at the water. And one of the things which I always have done, is I like to look at how the light reflects on the water of the ocean and just seeing those lines and like really just seeing them as like kind of like white diamonds and watch how they move them and like, not like in any sort of like trippy way, like literally like, oh, can I hold that? Let me see that shape. Can I hold that shape in my eyes and all this other sort of stuff? And so I'm always playing with the lights or with how the light hits the ocean. And the angle of it is always a certain way that it comes straight to your perspective. It comes straight to your perspective. If you play these sort of games, and you could even do that with like, I used to do it with street lights. I'd watch it snow when I was a kid and like hope that school would be canceled. And you squint your eyes and you get like the long lines, but they would always come to you. And then I was like, well, of course, all the light comes to you because it's all about your perspective. Like it is all about you, just like but we can share it. Like, where it goes from there, like the story does seem to be immensely personal, and I couch some of my things. I'm like, assuming the history they tell us is right. And I say that because I'm like, well, how do I know this wasn't all made up? Because this all just happened, when I was born. Because I've never seen the time before I was born. In fact, I don't even remember when I was born. I just know that they told me I was born, and maybe there are a couple pictures. That being said, I have delivered 2 children.
Okay, so you can
So
speak to
I'll say
theirs.
that. I'll say
then
that may deconstruct my life, but it's a fun sort of. It's I think that's a really interesting idea, because that questions everything. That points to at least all of the built-in assumptions that we don't even realize is a built-in assumption about our experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like a tailored experience, right? So maybe you, or maybe somebody, maybe you're just an entity somewhere else, and you just put a quarter in a machine, and they put this hat on you, and now that's what you are. You're having this tailored experience, and there's no way for us to say that that's not true, right? But it's just one of those things that you think about where you're just like, damn, that's pretty interesting. And I don't know what history was like. I don't know what the damn world looks like. I don't know, what's going on out there other than what I'm told. And then you get to a point where what you observe is your reality. Well, then now your observations are kind of counterbalanced or at odds against what you've been told. And so then it's like, well, what the hell's true then? Am I the one full of shit here, or is reality, or this baseline reality, the one full of shit here? And then maybe that's the whole point of all of it, right? Maybe it's just a damn game. The only reason I can see what's happening behind me is because it's in this camera, but my eyes can't see that. What if the world's not rendered behind me because it doesn't need to be, right? This is when you get on these deep, trippy type things that I was really looking forward to you coming on to talk about this stuff.
So this goes back to like where we began with the 3 levels of realities. This is how like I try to how I try to meet that. So the greater reality is like whatever the mystery is. It's like, is it a game? Is it a this? Are we living on top of the head of a giant? I don't know. Like, and I'm not, and that doesn't matter to me. I know that there's a mystery, and I don't know that mystery. I know that I'm in the baseline reality, and I know it's not what it seems. That's all I know. Like, I don't know if it's being rendered or what have you, and then I know that I live in the matrix. And then I say like, well, all I want to know are like, what are the rules? Like, how does it work? So then I can play the game differently. And I like to use the game because I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it matters so much. In fact, I think it's fun. So it does and it doesn't. Like, the stories matter because it makes the game friggin' awesome. But they don't matter because they all deconstruct. And so once you get into that space, and you're actually like living life that way, it's like, then it gets really exciting again in a different way. And you're like, okay, well, I am writing this story, but you can't bullshit yourself. If you've gotten to the level of, okay, this is what I think is going on. I think it's this, and and you're going to come up with a story, and I can write a story and it becomes true. As soon as you see a contradiction in your own story, like, that collapses. So it's like, it kind of like, as long as it's this, I always go back to what I call objective or baseline reality. I talked about this with astrology a little bit, like, the objective astrology. It's like, you go back as far as you can go. You go back as far as you go where it doesn't really deconstruct, knowing that it's still probably bullshit, but it's as far as I could go. And then you run with it. And that's what I mean. Like, you can't bullshit yourself, because that's why it's called believe. Be the lie. And it's like, they're telling you the truth in that, and like, because you're going to be whatever you tell. But if you could do it in a way which is as authentic as you are and your awareness, well, then it's probably going to take you to a higher level. That's my take.
Well, I love your take. And it speaks to the fact that maybe that's back to the thing about how more powerful we are. Maybe we are so damn powerful that we can literally change the reality in which we live just based on our perception and our interpretation of what's around us and our beliefs in ourselves to do so. You can do this in small little ways. And I've done it with, like, okay, a bird will land on that branch right there, and I'll just sit there and wait. And then, bam, a bird lands on it. And it'll one-up me. 2 birds will land on it, and it'll be like, didn't see that one coming, did you, dickhead? And it's like, okay, well, I got what I wanted, but it was better than I thought, right? And then you'll sit there and say, I had this conversation with a guy named Paul Wilson on my show, and he talked about whenever you start to pay attention to something, now that's all you see, right? And so the example he used was a blue Tesla. So whenever you're like, blue Teslas aren't super common, but then you see one and you think about it, now all you see are freaking blue Teslas. So I use the example, well, what if you change that word out for opportunities or advantages or as helpful signs from the universe, however you want to put it, that you are in the right direction, and that's all you see. Because people will then get in that spiral the other way. They'll say, well, all I see is obstacles, all I see are barriers to my truth, all I see are lies. And that's true because you're powerful and you can see whatever the hell you want. And so you get into this alchemistic type of a thought process with things where you really start to dick with your reality, and it's awesome. It's a lot of fucking fun, man.
Yeah, I will go back to the example of what you said. Like, so, what did you say? You said that, what if all I see are opportunities? What if all I see are confirmations that I'm on the right path? And this is why I think for most of us, going back to like, the practicality of like being a human being. And part of the human being is the inner world and the emotional world, and that's what's that's where so much is screwed up in the human being right now. You still got to that is the name of that is the primary name of the game. That's the only thing you actually have control over. And if that hasn't been done, or if done isn't the right word, I think probably if that has not been approached or looked at and is a thing, then very much like the signs you get from the universe are all going to be the ones that are going to bring you to your own self-destruction, so that you can then go and do your emotional stuff, and then you can flip back and then eventually do the same thing again. But like that seems to be part of this like flip. I love the two birds thing, and yes. Like that's seemingly like how that's how reality works. That's how reality works.
Yeah, and like the people who will stare at a cloud, and I've done this actually. And okay, let me preface this. I know clouds dissipate. We know that, okay? But you can actually pick out a particular cloud in a cluster of like 3 or 4 of them. And you could kind of stare at it with intention, with focus, and say, okay, fade into the back, disappear, disappear. Fade into the atmosphere, disappear, disappear. And you could repeat that. And I'll be damned, man, if that fucking cloud doesn't disappear, the one you're thinking about and pointing at, not the ones around it that are also affected by the same atmosphere and that should dissipate at the same rate. You actually have a bit of manipulation over your reality in this way. Now, I know that attracting a couple of birds that are flying around anyway, but to that particular damn branch, I mean, the odds of that probably are pretty good, right? But then to make that one cloud dissipate, well, we know clouds dissipate. But that's the story, right? That's the thought process. That's how you break it down, is you say, well, the odds of it of this. And then you start discounting the fact that maybe what you did was actually pretty damn cool, and that you do have more control over your reality than you're being told that you do, because now you're being opposed by this idea of all these rational people that say it's not true, or that it was very possible what you wanted to do anyway.
Absolutely. Well, first thing, whenever I see like clouds dissipating, I'm just assuming someone outside of my line of sight. They're like, someone just made that dissipated. So that was always my thought. It never occurred to me that it happened naturally. I thought it was always someone dissipating them somewhere.
I like it.
That makes perfect sense.
But so it's just an interesting thing, and when we start to talk about deconstructing the matrix and start to break out of the paradigms, and those are the concepts I'm most interested in, because it's a reinforcing system that, and maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe there's a thing
how about this? The very fact that we go through the process to like check our logic. Like, just like you're saying, like, well, what are the odds of this? What are the odds of that? Or like, let me couch it this way. Like, we all do it. Versus like, there's probably, there's a way that the game is played, that they go up, they look, they like dissipate cloud disappears, and they go on their day. And it never even crosses in consciousness that, oh, I did it or I didn't do it. All I know is like, I looked up, I thought that happened, and I haven't had another, like, all of those are the things like, which we're becoming aware of. Like, I like to always point this one out. Like, think about this, like today, how many stop signs do you think you saw in either your direct vision or peripheral vision?
No, I didn't drive anywhere today, so that one's.
Did you walk anywhere?
We live on 12 acres out in the country, so there's only one.
So you weren't out there,
here.
So you didn't go. So okay, in a week.
Oh, that I consciously paid attention to, or that I came across.
Well, whatever. Like, just give me a number.
I'd say in a week, 30, 40, 50, somewhere around in there. Let's
Yeah,
say 50.
so we say 30 foot, and you probably are on a much lower number if you're living on 12 acres away and a little bit outside. So, and then you go and you extrapolate that out. So 50 in a week, so 2,500 in a year, and then 25,000 in a decade. Think about those as impressions. Like, think about that, it's the same size, or the same shape, the same sort of font, the same color. And it's always going in, it's always going in, it's always going in. And then you compare yourself to the version of you that's never seen a stop sign once. Has never been given that message. And we have all of these constant sort of things which are affecting us. And so the breaking out of the matrix is beginning to become recognized of that. I changed how I work with a day planner. I try not to say the C word because unless I'm talking about bills. That's the only time you use the calendar word as it relates to bills.
Right.
That's what a calendar means. A calendar is how you keep track of when you pay your debts. That's a calendar. So when you schedule your life in a calendar and you're in a debt-based, these are all of the things that we don't even think about. But this is what holds the consciousness. Before you can go and really be free, we don't even know what we're trying to be free of.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
And so I find that very exciting. I saw I was looking at some of your past guests. It looked like one of your past guests did something on bullet journaling. I'm assuming it was bullet journaling.
Taylor Rutsala. She's great. Her episode just came out not too long ago. She's wonderful.
So to me, that's one of the top secret techniques of getting out of the matrix. I take it to another level, particularly how to get out of the calendar. But that's you are putting creativity and you are owning your experience in a way. And maybe not I'm in alignment with all of the practices of bullet journaling, but the very idea of it and what that speaks about, returning how we create the experiences of our life, plan our days. As long as you live in a place where you got to plan your day, you might as well do it in a certain way. And that's why so many people get excited about bullet journaling or stuff like that, because you're you don't understand this small little thing. It had amazing changes on my life. The same thing with Zentangle. I don't know if you know what that is. It's this simple drawing technique. But it changes people's lives because it's these small things that move us out of what has been trapping consciousness. And by that, I mean the way we interpret reality in ways we don't even realize. It's real easy to be oh, don't watch the news. They're trying to, of course. What about the stuff that ain't that easy or that ain't that obvious?
And I like that you pointed out Taylor's journaling because she has a company called Never Stay Stagnant. Guys, go check that out. It's on Instagram. It's linked in that episode, and she's wonderful. She's a delightful young entrepreneur who broke out. This is the fun part about it. She broke out of her matrix that was described for her in the corporate world to start deliberate journals, or bullet point journaling, as you put it, for other people. So she designed a concept by breaking out of that allowed her to break out of the matrix, that allow other people to break out of their own matrix. And it's a very deliberate way to orchestrate and to kind of script your life, right? And then once you write it down, the power of, this turns into magic with a K, right? Now you're scribing out words, and now you're creating spells that then create your reality. And on very subconscious levels, I think you're absolutely right. People will go through their day just based on rules to follow and stop signs to see, and being told, okay, you go there, you stand here, the lanes in things that don't allow people to just kind of go, oh, you were here before me, you go ahead. No, it's a cue, right? It's this orchestrated, mechanistic type of reality. There's a guy who wrote a book called The Possibility Principle, and his name is Mel Schwartz. I'm having him on here in a little bit. I've got him booked here in a couple of weeks. But his whole idea is breaking out of that mechanistic type of regime or a rigid schedule type of a thing, and it's brilliant. The way he goes about it, and he actually refers back to quantum physics on how to pay attention to your thoughts. I mean, he breaks things down from thought to thinking and the differences between. It's fascinating. And so that guy, whenever he comes out, I'll send you the link.
Definitely. And I think this seems to be happening right now in terms of we're all figuring out these different little pieces of the puzzle. because this is like it's a group thing. Like there again, everything you see, everything they teach you in the Matrix is based upon a truth. Like herd immunity is a thing. Herd immunity means like there's got to be enough of us that like kind of get it, so that and this is us like when you talk about like, we got to wake ourselves up, or us waking up, like, yeah, this seems to be it. Like we each are figuring this out until we don't need that. Oh, this is what I want to say. So you brought up about 5 minutes ago, you said you're talking about believing something and then you realize later that like it was wrong, but it brought you to the next. So here's an image which I've been holding in my mind for a while with the exact same concept. And I don't know if you've ever seen like maybe like the old fashioned cartoons from like maybe the 40s, I think. And they often would show this image of like, they would do it over and over again of someone running up the steps. And as they're running up the steps behind them begin to disintegrate.
Yes. Yes.
But like, that's basically what it is. It's like, I'm going to use this, or you get here to get to here to get here. But then finally you get up to that new foundation. And that's part of the process.
That's a great analogy.
And by doing it, like, you're being honest and truthful with yourself. And like, but that is seemingly like a big part of it. I personally this is my personal opinion of the way which I think, you asked me like, what's the way we should be? This is the way I think we're meant to be. I think this, like there's a being, the human being, where there is no persona. I'm going to say there's like speaking is much, much different. And there is a way in which we intuit and know everything about the other person. And so when we're learning about everything right now, having no privacy. Oh, you got no privacy. That's based upon a truth too. Remember, this is an inverted friggin' truth. And so what's the truth? The truth is that everyone was friggin' opened. And so that means every friggin' thought you have, that doesn't mean you don't have like lustful thoughts or anything like that. It's just like, everyone knows it. Everyone has these thoughts. And like, there's no shame, because shame is only when you're trying to friggin' hide something. And everyone that understands everyone. And when you're like that, there's like the idea of having, like, if you grew up in that world where like everyone knew everyone like that. And like, that's just how you were. And you still live life. Like you still had whatever your life was at that time. Like, you'd be doing that, but this is just like the backdrop. Like they would see how we experience consciousness, and it would probably be the most confusing thing in the world. They're like, well, why aren't you telling the truth? Like it's so foreign. Like, and that's what I think the way it should be. But that's what we're moving towards. And like, like the falling down of the steps is seeing through, whether it's personal lies or personal blind spots or collective lies or blind spots, but it's to move to a place of honesty.
Yep, I completely agree. Now, why do you think this happened? Do you think this has to do with the age of Aquarius, is why we're kind of shifting into this new consciousness, and not the age of Aquarius, just maybe a certain time? Because I know you talk about, I saw your video about the Saturn and how it represents or refers back to the age of Aquarius. So I'm interested in that concept from you. Why do you think so many goddamn people are waking up right now, or at least starting to see it for what it is? Either go, well, shit, I don't have anywhere to go. The way that I've kind of been relating this lately is there's basically like a volcano that's erupted, okay? And humanity, or consciousness represented by humanity, is at the bottom of this hill. And there's lava flows flowing down. And there seems to be a better place to be, that's maybe the awareness of what's going on, or a raising of consciousness. And then there's a place where people just go, I just got to fit in. There's higher ground over here. It's safe over here. But really the safety's on the other side, or just, and it's basically just different, not right or wrong, just different, right? And then you've got little patches of ground in between that haven't been completely submerged in lava, but there's a flow around it to where you've got to skip over these rocks to get to one side or another. I've found that that's maybe just more of a representation of what's going on with consciousness right now, that there are a lot of people that are like, no, stay over here where it's safe. And some people are going, no, it's safer over there, and skipping rocks and finding little truths along the way to get to the other side of the lava. And eventually that path is going to be closed off, right? All those little stepping stones in the middle are going to be completely submerged in lava. And then you've got only where you are and where you are now.
That's I like that analogy. That I like the picture that painted in my mind. And I mean, I think for me, the bigger point is, or the more exciting thing is, like, this is happening right now. And maybe it's happening right now because of, like, what you said. What was the gentleman, the probability or the potentiality book?
Yeah, the
Max?
possibility principle. His name's Mel Schwartz. He's fascinating.
Mel
He's
Schwartz. I just wanted to
psychologist.
say Mel Schwartz. So like, you know, what's happening is the fact that, you know, we're seeing this, and like, as I'm waking up and you're waking up, we're seeing more people, and it's happening. And like, you know, maybe that's happening. But whatever's causing it, and it's certainly like the whole COVID thing really kicked off a different transition. It is moving people. It's moving people one way or the other, one way or the other. Regarding specifically, like, the age of Aquarius, like, so this would be my story of how I see what's happening as it relates to creating false reality and so forth. So like, particularly what's happening right now, like age of Aquarius, since the what was it? The musical Hair. That's when the song Age of Aquarius really got into the collective consciousness. Like, oh, there's an age of Aquarius. Okay, well, you know what? You know, that's when that started. And I guess it was been speaking about maybe about 100 years earlier, when they started talking about it in a lot of like the British mystery schools and stuff like that. But that's when it became like kind of mainstream. So, you know, I think on a certain level, like on a very big level, all of that is complete false reality bullshit. It's false reality bullshit. We live, like, there is an objective astrology. There is tons of relative truth in astrology. Like, when you're born into an astrological system, and you become part of it. So when you use that system to go and tell who you are, like, it makes sense. But that doesn't necessarily mean, like, outside of that system that it still holds water, or at least it's been manipulated. So that being said, we live in a world where the institutions utilize astrology and astrological stories to control the matrix. Like, that's built into the deep backdrop of controlling the collective consciousness. And like, all of that's based upon something real, but what they're doing right now is a total manipulation. And what they're creating this false reality about what the age of Aquarius is. And they're creating an inverted version of it. And they're utilizing like manipulations of the heavens to explain and to link it into objective reality. Like, it's kind of like a whole bunch of people said that you need to wear a mask. You need to wear a mask. It was just like people saying it like on TV, but lo and behold, everyone starts wearing a mask. Like, it went from like, this wasn't real at all until it was like these people internalized it, and then it became real. So this is what's happening with like part of like this age of Aquarius, this inverted age of Aquarius, and how it's inverted. So if you go and you follow the Aquarius archetype, I mean, for the first thing you want to say is Aquarius is supposed to be who? I don't know, but this is how it's always positioned. It's supposed to be the golden age. It's supposed to be the age of humanity, of brotherhood among men, sisterhood among men, and all of that sort of stuff. It's meant to be about lightning. Like, that's the symbol of the Aquarius. It's lightning. So it's often like taking one standard deviation away, and they're saying it's about electricity, because electricity is kind of lightning, but it's actually like about lightning, whatever that may mean. And it has to do with like innovation. And so innovation is really just like doing things in new ways. But it's in this like really nice, like family brotherhood sort of way. So the inversion of that is like innovation is being expressed primarily through computer technology, which everything about computer technology, everything is found fundamentally and foundationally about computer technology is inversion, anti-human, anti-earth. There's no way around it. Like if you look at the facts, like how you build computers, who invented the computers, what they're doing with the computers, what they're calling the friggin' internet, you're like, oh yeah, well, it's an inversion to reality. So it's like all of that is like part of the age of Aquarius. Electricity, particularly what we live in an electrical universe. That's seemingly a very accurate way of describing the environment. But how we create electricity by like wrapping by coiling copper around in these loops and then running magnets over it to extract electrons out of Earth. Like, no, that's the different electricity. That's an inverted. And like, there's not like, we think it's normal. Like certainly it powers our lights, but that's an inversion. That's part of the age of Aquarius. And the last thing is like, instead of this brotherhood of humanity, it's more of like this globalism, like global culture and global laws, and we all do that. So it's like, this is the inversion. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. And we're seeing it tied in like this is going back, like they've really been putting this into play like hardcore since 1945. But by doing that, the more that squeezes the population, the more it's going to wake some of them up. So that's kind of the dance. Like if I'm going to go and try to change and do this thing, like I'm going to have certain points of exposure. And like right now we're having the biggest exposure point because all of the stuff you've been saying for years, like no one wanted to look because, well, they didn't want to look because they're like, I have a good thing going. I got a good thing going. I'm 5 years away from retirement. Don't tell me that bullshit. I've done the right, but now they don't have that anymore. And so it's like, they're like, this is part of the squeeze. Like, so at the same time, there's like, I mean, this is my opinion, take it for whatever it's worth, but this is the whole cryptocurrency sort of thing. It's like, they're trying to come on in. Yeah, you can do it on the computer and it's great. You're going to make more money doing nothing. You're going to be free from the matrix. It's called friggin' blockchain. Read the history. They say an unnamed person from Japan invented it.
Have you heard
this thing that's supposed to control every transaction on the human world on Earth was invented by someone you don't know. They won't even tell you who it was. Like, I mean, it's crazy. So this is the inversion. They're squeezing us, like they're doing whatever they can, but they're more exposed now. The ridiculousness is more exposed now. So that to me is part of the awakening. It's like, well, now's the move, but this is also when we're going to like, everyone's going to get awake. And then here's and then ultimately you go to like what you said like 10 minutes ago, like, well, what if this is like really like we're creating our own tailored game and it's all bullshit anyway? Like, and maybe that's what this looks like. That's what that looks like, but this is what's happening. More people are kind of waking up. We're figuring shit out. And we're meeting new people. Like I would have never met you had it not been for this.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is awesome.
This is funny. If it wasn't for COVID, I'd be still standing on the street corner with the end is near sign and no one's listening to me.
I thought I recognized you.
I'm just joking. I never did that.
No, I know. And then a couple of things to that though, man. It does seem like everybody's waking up right now. Now, if it is a tailored experience for us, it feels like the boss level, right? It feels like it's all coming crashing down, and this is the boss. This is when you've really got to get your shit together mentally, where you've really got to kind of tailor your experience, and you've really got to buckle down and assume where you want. It's like again, the lava, the line's been drawn. Now, what's interesting, too, is I think it's so overt, it's so ridiculous, because it is that. It's so freaking ridiculous. Joe Biden's a goddamn clone, and we all know it, but nobody's talking about it. And then you... Then you say, well, it's so ridiculous. Well, what's the point of that? And the point maybe is because they figured out that we're past this point of no return to where nobody's going to call them out on it or not enough people to make a damn change, and that we've been so divided as a humanity, as a species, then there's nothing we can do about it collectively because we are damn near split in the middle. If not, the numbers are way far on the other side. And so you get to this point with this stuff, man, to where you're just like, okay, well, what's the answer? And I think lately for me, I've said this on damn near every show. Just been saying you got to tend the garden you've got. You've just got to kind of control your own mind. You stay within. You look within yourself. You control your family, or you take care of your family. You literally go outside, mow your own lawn. Plant some flowers if you want, grow your own food if you want to, or you have the space to do that. These are the things that you can control, your mental faculties, your emotions, and what you choose to spend your time with. If it is a march towards totalitarianism, we're not there yet. We're close, but we're not there yet. So just enjoy and connect. And so to the amount of people waking up right now, that's and why I put it that way is because it does feel like the switch has been flipped, like what you said earlier about, wow, that person surprised me that they actually bought into all this shit. And then somebody else surprised you because you figured they would be the one that bought into it, but they're the ones coming up and asking you about UFOs. They're the ones going like, so are they interdimensional or what? And you're just like, damn, man, okay, well, let's go talk. It is surprising to see who's waking up, how they're waking up, and what the word even waking up means. I think it's just really an observation on the matrix or on the fake reality that's in front of us, right? That's all we mean when we say waking
That's all
up.
it means. It's waking up is greater awareness than what you had before. Like we're all in a process. It's like something that you thought was a truth when you find out that that's not a truth. That's a waking up process. It's funny what your comment about the UFOs. I sat down and I had a very serious conversation with my sons, and I was like, there are two types of people out there. There's one type that thinks that Sasquatch is just a very large, hairy mammal. And then there's another type of person who thinks Sasquatch is a interdimensional higher being. And so at some point, you're going to have to choose which side. Literally, I had that conversation with them, and they look at me, I mean, they're used to it by now. I've been their father their whole lives, but it's like, it just never gets old for me.
It's hilarious because that's it. That's the only two. That's what you got. Not is Bigfoot real or not. Is he interdimensional?
It's like, these are your two choices. You're almost 18.
Yeah. You need to hunker down. You need to pick a side, son. You know, what shirt am I printing out for you?
Exactly.
I love it, Michael. I love it, man. Well, listen, there are so many damn things I want to talk to you about. Can I have you for just a little bit longer and we'll wrap it up here?
Yeah, let's go another 15 minutes.
That's perfect. So, have you gotten your calendar thing figured out? Do you want to go down that road, or did you want to touch on something else from before? Do you want to talk about dragons or your calendar idea?
We could talk calendar. We could talk calendar because we did the Bujo plug. All right. So let me explain. So can I walk you through a process?
Yes, please.
All right. So I've been really interested in, for probably about the last year, I've been thinking about time. I've been thinking about cycles. I've been thinking about like what's real, what's not real. And the calendar thing has always been, in the back of my mind. I think for me, at least, when I first realized that there's something wrong is like the first time someone points out like, well, September means 7 and it's the 9th month, in October,
Yeah.
And like when the first time you hear that, you're like, yeah. And you like learn all this sort of stuff. And so that was for me, like a long time ago. And I went through a lot, like as far as I could go with it. And I looked at all the different calendar systems. And I was like, and I tried a couple different things too. And I was like, whatever. I've actually always struggled with the calendar. I've always had this internal like conflict. Like I get when I see a really nice calendar, I get turned on. I'm like, that is awesome. But I can't keep a calendar for the life of me. Like I'll buy a calendar. I used to buy the calendars and like, I just would never write anything in it. Like that was always hard for me. Are you going to show me a calendar?
Bam. That's how I do all my booking. Look at that. Isn't that hot?
Look at that. I like that. I like to see that. I like to see the specs. So all of that's going on. So that's been like kind of like in the back of my mind, the back of my world. And there's something I like about calendars. There's something like I really honor about the planning process. There's something which is like that calendar. I don't, I know about calendars. I don't want to participate with it. And so the moon cycle, the lunar cycle is one of the most real-time keeping processes that we can all objectively agree upon. I mean, we might not agree upon like what the moon is and like whether it's a satellite from Saturn or not. I don't know, but like I open to that possibility. But for now, I'm still trusting the moon because it's, you know, that at least I could see until the onus is on you to prove that to me.
That's right. That's right.
So I got the moon up there. And so we obviously know that the moon corresponds with months, you know, moon and month. But the moon's weird. Like the moon's weird because like sometimes it's a 28-day cycle. Some days it's 27 or 29-day, 28-day, 27-day cycle. Sometimes you see it in the day. Sometimes you don't see it in the day. Like that's half the mystery of the moon. That's why the moon represents like, you know, mystery amongst other things. Like it's an unpredictable thing and it totally captivates you. So I've been thinking about moons. I've been thinking about calendars and months and all that sort of stuff. And I was looking, if you've ever seen like a lunar chart or a lunar calendar, I like to look at those and they show you like what the moon looks like over the year. Like this is like when you got a first quarter and this is like, you know, when you got the full moon and they graph it out and it always looks cool. And when you see that, there's a matrix around it. You know, a matrix is just like a structure, a system for something to grow in. And so it's got a horizontal line and a vertical line, and going up and down is probably going to tell you like days 1 through 31, and then going across the top are the months. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, the moon is being defined by months. Like this entire image of what they're showing me, like I'm thinking like I'm all into the moon. I'm breaking out the matrix. I'm looking at, and I'm like, but they are framing. They're framing my understanding. They're framing my understanding of this actual cycle, and they're putting that cycle in this false reality. Like, don't get me wrong. Like the calendar's got a purpose. I get it. I'm being a little bit theoretical, but I'm going to go into very, very practical. So I'm thinking about that. I'm like, well, I'm going to flip that switch. Like I still need to go and like interact with the calendar system. Like I you know, we had to schedule this and we had to agree upon the date, but I'm going to look at it first through the lunar, through the natural cycle, as opposed to looking at it first through the false reality. So I'm like, all right, well, I kept on running with this. So I was like, all right. So I like to, in my personal process, like what I like to do is I like to pull cards, and I pull cards mostly for contemplation reasons. I like to pull cards because it adds like a little bit of like, if you're going to be planning, like, oh, I'm planning my day. Obviously that's like a lot of structure, but I'm going to throw some mystery in it. So like pulling cards is like kind of like a big deal for me. And like the first of the month, I pull a card like when I begin the year, like one card for every month for the whole year. And then like for every month, I then take that card and then I go a little bit deeper. And like I do like a whole thing so that I have a month to think about what that's about. Like that's kind of my system. And I like it. Like that's one of my favorite things to do. And one of my other favorite things to do is like on Sundays is like beginning to like, I'm going to sit down and like I bullet journal. I like to make my own calendar. Like I write out my calendar. I like to go through that process. And then I started realizing, I'm like, if I'm no longer going to follow this month cycle, and I'm going to move to the moon cycle, I'm like, why am I following any of their weeks? I'm like, what the hell is Sunday anyway? There's no such thing as Sunday. Like statistically, more people die on Saturday, but second day is Monday. Statistically, more people die on Monday. Like that's a thing, but there's no such thing as Monday. They made this shit up.
Yeah. It's all just an agreement, right?
It's an agreement, but it's an agreement that has real consequences. But nonetheless, so I'm like, there's no Sunday. Why am I doing this? So I totally changed all of my planning. I changed all of like the timing of when I did. So I want to tell you what I changed it to. So I'll first show you this. So what I did right here. So your Bujo girl, if she could see this, I think she'd give me like a thumbs up for this. So Taylor, this is my calendar.
I need to connect.
So what I've done is I've gone to like the months, like the traditional months of like, we're in the pink moon right now, and I begin it. That my month begins on the new moon. That's it. And I have my day count right next to it. And then after that, I have the corresponding day of the calendar. And then I have next to that, I've got the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is my Rosetta Stone.
Damn.
So this is how I go through it. But I need to break things up by weeks. So you could see the color differences. So those are the phases. There's no such friggin' thing as a week, but there is such thing as a phase. You can objectively see that. You go from new moon to first quarter. That is a truth of nature. You go from first quarter to the full moon and then all the way back. So then, and here's what's interesting. Every lunar cycle is a little bit different. Sometimes it's like an 8-day week. Some days it's a 6-day week when you plan it out. But this is how I create my calendar. And then I make my own actual week. So I'll show you what a week looks like. So then, where's the most recent one? So I'll go and I'll just spell out for this week has 8 days. So I'm moving off of there. My week began on the full moon, which was Monday, the 26th. But that would be like what I used to treat as Sunday. And so what I've done is I've done everything, but the way I've always done, but I've tweaked it. I'm no longer doing it from their system first. I'm doing it from the system which I'm in, but I'm doing the same sort of thing. But it keeps getting deeper and deeper from that because I plan my weeks now based upon like what's happening with the phase of the moon. You go from new moon to first quarter. Well, what's happening? You're going from total darkness to like it's getting lighter. You're expanding. So that first week is about expanding, but it's still dark. So it's kind of like inner expanding. So this is my time all about planning and strategy and all the stuff which you do where you're doing work, but it's like behind the scenes work. And then as soon as you have that first quarter, you're like beyond the midpoint. You're more than halfway lit and you're moving up. So I'm still working hard, but now I'm doing outer work. Like now I'm out and so everyone can go and see me. Like I'll go on a show like this. And then you reach the full moon and then you start to come down. It starts to get smaller. So now the energy is like, now I'm starting to have fun. Because like now it's like, I'm going downhill. And then when you get to the final phase, when you're like, I call that collapsing and then hidden. It's like, this is total rest. This is when you rest. It's like all that whole sort of roller coaster ride. And so now it's like, I am still taking advantage of all of the benefits of having a system. But the system is, there are 3 things that come with it. One, it's grounded in baseline reality. I don't know what baseline reality is, but it's not grounded in the matrix. There's number one. When you're magically planning your day in like the matrix first lens, well, guess what? It's always a matrix plan. I know this is not. I'm still in the matrix in an extent, but I'm not going first through there. Second, it's always moving. It's dynamic. Just like nature, just like baseline reality. So it adds that. You do it by hand, you make it colorful, you do like your artistic thing. And the thing is like a full system and it is completely aligned in objective reality. So that's my system. Cool. I'm real excited about it. That's why I got excited about the Bujo girl, because I'm like, I'm Bujo as fuck.
No, Taylor would love to work with you on this, man. How cool would that collaboration be to come up with something like this? That is, I mean, you've done it, right? Yeah, you just need it in print and color coded it. Now, I do like though.
Is that what she does? It's like she comes up with the templates?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She created the whole thing.
Yeah,
Taylor Root Sala.
We need to talk.
How about
you could broker that deal.
I'm gonna connect you two. The only thing I want is one of them. That's it. And you guys go nuts with it, okay? But
all right, I think
this
that
is
sounds
fascinating.
Fair.
It's so interesting
because I've got like a whole line of like the stickers. Like if I could get like the visuals on it, I would love to create the world's greatest Bujo flexible day planning system.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, it sounds so cool, man, and so interesting because yes, it is still a system, but it's your system. And so you've modeled this off of more of the natural world than anything else. I love it. I love this idea. You'd briefly brought it up to me and I have it in my notes calendar, 90 minutes, 2 hours and stuff. And so I love it, man. I think it's fascinating. I will hook you and Taylor up. I think she would love to do something like this. That's really cool.
All right.
All right, so you guys can get on the template, and we'll make that happen for you.
We'll
Michael,
see what
man.
happens. And how about this? And this is what we'll do for anyone who listened to the show. Anyone who listens to the show, they witnessed it. They went. Who knows? Like you could go and you could tell this to Taylor, and Taylor's gonna be like, "That's the stupidest thing I ever heard." I'm not going to work with that.
She's
I don't
really
think she'll say that, but that's a possibility. It's not a high probability, but it is a possibility. So for anyone who's listening, when we bring this, if we bring this, how we bring this into magical reality,
right.
There's got to be some sort of like reward for them. We'll figure that one out.
We'll figure it out like a 10% off thing or whatever if you use.
I'm thinking like a free sticker.
Okay, we could free sticker it up. I've got some.
I'd like to give someone a sticker, but that's me. I got like this. So there's some of my stickers.
See, so okay, well, you and
those yours. I'll send you some if you send some to me.
That's what we'll do. We'll do a cross marketing thing here, and we'll get that going. And Taylor's going to be totally on board with this because she's an entrepreneur. This is a niche deal, and I think it's going to be a huge deal, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And now the problem with this, though, all these. I'm trying to think of the nice word to say it. All these people who don't really do stuff like this are going to hijack this. It's like all the people going on ayahuasca retreats and shit, like they're not from that world, but that's okay. Dip your toe in it and enjoy it. And then this will become a trend. It'll be a trending thing. You'll be hashtag trending on Instagram, and this is how you'll blow up and become a bajillionaire, dude, is by this right here.
A calendar? I don't want to be a bajillionaire.
Too bad.
Is the one thing I know this is the one thing I know. Like, I know a lot about friggin' money, more than most people should. Not because I've had a lot, just because I know a lot about money. So this is here's the truth. Here's the truth. Look at the human body. What do you hoard in the human body? What do you do with oxygen? What do you do with water? What do you do with, you want to have a little bit of fat on your bones. I'm a little bit skinny, like I've been told many times. You need a little bit of fat on your bones, but we don't want to hoard. You know what? This system is corrupt, but and it's built upon magic. But if you want to at least be in harmony with it, it's about one thing. It's about cash flow. It's about current. Have it come in, have it go out. If we got to be in this system, that's the only way it won't destroy you. The moment you think that, listen, I'm not giving anyone financial advice, but if you're going to take my financial advice, you want to keep 6 months amount of money on if you can do that, you want to have that like in savings, access to. You want to never have any you want to buy things if you can. But that being said, this is how you manage money. It's all about cash flow. Because if you try to do anything other than that, it's going to go and destroy you. The system was made for that. And so it's like, I don't want to be a billionaire, but what I would like to do is have cash flow to share with as many people as I possibly can.
That's what I meant by
so
that.
That's what I'd want to do.
Well, then let's do that.
Very clear about that.
Because it's a tool, right? It's a tool in the system. So if you can use that tool, that's very effective. That has a lot of power in the system. Now, if you can take that and give that power back to other people to where now they're not struggling day to day, that's a big thing. That's an altruistic way to create a dope-ass calendar that's brand new. You're breaking the system. You're breaking the game. You're getting back to the ancients on this shit, and I love it. And I have so many damn things I want to talk to you about, but let's save it for another one. Would you come back
We'll save it for another one. This was a lot of fun.
Okay, so you can come back on.
This is the only time I've ever been hooked up with like a designer of calendars. I didn't even know that existed. This is like,
bro.
Okay, one last thing and then we'll go. This is an example of how it's tailored exactly for you. I'm a friggin' calendar design person. I don't know about templates. You have the template person and you're the person who connected the whole thing. Like, this is watching it happen in real time.
And did you hear what you just said? It's tailored for you. Okay, do you know the young lady's name?
What?
Taylor. God damn it,
there we go.
I love this. I love everything about this. You are fantastic. You've got a home here. You're Soul Tribe for sure, man. You have a home here anytime. So if you don't mind, tell my audience where they can find you, man, and we'll get this thing wrapped up for you.
Probably the best place is susquehannaalchemy.com. From there, you can find everything else. Susquehanna Alchemy on YouTube, like that works. I've got a lot of videos there. On Instagram, pretty much all I do is tell you when a video comes out. I'm starting something on Rockfin, and I'm kind of like, at first I was hemming and hawing, but now I'm excited because if this comes to fruition, it's going to be the most fun thing you've ever seen. But it's still in the dream phase, and you don't ever talk about anything while it's still in the dream phase. It's still growing, but I might be doing something going there real soon. And if you want any of the personal stuff, subscribestar.com, Susquehanna-Alchemy is where I put up that sort of content. And I just came up with a t-shirt shop, and the t-shirts are awesome. So like you want to go, you'd find that from the website, but like the t-shirts, I definitely would highly recommend them because I think they're cool.
Okay, well, I'm going to get some t-shirts from you. This is great. Okay, cool. Well, I am going to leave this on one final conspiracy theory that I'm making up right now, actually, as you and I are speaking. Now, I will preface this by saying that you're a handsome man, okay? No homo here, but you're a handsome guy. I am going to say that Kurt Cobain never died, and that you are actually Kurt Cobain continuing on.
I'll tell you this.
Have you not gotten that ever? Has
I
no one
don't
told you that
think-
you look like Kurt Cobain kind of?
I don't think anyone has ever seen us in the same room before.
Oh, shit.
Together.
Okay. We're going to leave it on that, Michael. Michael, thank you so much, man. Let's do this again soon, brother. It's been an absolute honor.
Thank you.
Incredibly grateful for Michael Wann spending some time with us today. The tip of the iceberg, guys. He will be back on. We will explore some fascinating concepts. You guys can do some more deep dives into his work and into his ideas and his perception, which is fascinating, at his Susquehanna-Alchemy. It is linked below in the show notes. Just go down there and click. As far as this show goes, guys, you can find us at expandingrealitypodcast.com. That is where links to all of the socials are. The YouTubes, your Twitters, your Instagrams for you kids, because you love that shit, so I just keep putting it up. As well as the YouTube. You can see how much he looks like Kurt Cobain in the YouTube video. Just check it out. It's an interesting correlation there. As well as our Patreon. If you find the show valuable, if you think it's great, liking and sharing is always the most beneficial way to help out. But if you wanted to go even further, if you're like, man, this dude's fascinating and awesome and I love him, well, thank you, first of all. I think you're great too. Go ahead and throw down on some Patreon. Contribute as little as much as you think. It always helps, and we're always grateful for it. As well, go ahead and pick up a piece of litter this week, guys. Buy somebody a meal that's behind you in line. Do something out of the ordinary to change somebody's day for the better. Get out of that left-hand lane. That always changes my day when somebody sees me coming up, very fast behind them because we live in Texas. It's just the way we drive. And then they shift on over. I'm like, dude, you listen to the show and I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Common sense. Way to go. As well as just go ahead and, just be nice, man. Just smile at a stranger, pet a strange dog. That's always great, right? Think about these concepts, guys. Go check Michael out. He's wonderful. I will be reaching out to Taylor for those calendars, so expect those soon. And just in general, guys, thank y'all so much for listening, and y'all just be good to one another. We'll see you next time.